The mop bucket hit the marble floor, and the water spread out like a slow grey tide, and for one frozen second the entire lobby of Vale Tower went silent. 50 investors, 3 security guards, and one very young billionaire, all staring at the old man on his knees. "Are you deaf, or just stupid?" Damon Vale said it loud. He wanted it loud. "I asked you to move." The old man didn't shout back. He didn't even flinch the way the crowd expected. He simply set down the rag in his hand, looked at the wet floor he'd just been cleaning, and then looked up at the 28-year-old in the $10,000 suit who had just kicked over his bucket on purpose. "Of course, sir," he said quietly. "I'll have it dry in a minute." That single, calm sentence, that was the moment. Remember it. Because in about 4 hours, every powerful person standing in that lobby would replay it in their heads and feel sick. Let me back up. Damon Vale was the kind of rich that arrives early and leaves a mess. At 23, he'd built a payment app in a rented garage. At 26, he'd sold half of it for more money than most towns earn in a decade. And on this particular Monday morning, he was strutting into the headquarters he had just acquired, a gleaming 40-story glass tower in the heart of the financial district, to sign the final papers that would make the building, and the company inside it, officially his. He'd never set foot in the place before. He didn't need to. Damon believed buildings were just boxes and people were just numbers, and the only number that mattered was the one with his name on it. So when he pushed through the revolving doors that morning, flanked by his lawyer and his social media manager filming everything for his 3 million followers, he wasn't looking at the soaring marble atrium or the fountain or the wall of brass that listed the company's founders. He was looking for a camera angle, and there, right in the middle of his perfect shot, was a problem. An old man in a grey janitor's uniform, slowly, carefully mopping the floor. The man was maybe 70. Thin silver hair, neat, combed back. A face full of soft lines, the kind earned over decades. His uniform was clean and pressed, his name tag a little faded. He worked the mop in slow, even strokes, humming something under his breath, completely absorbed in making the marble shine as if the floor actually mattered to him. "You've got to be kidding me," Damon muttered. He waved at one of his assistants. "Get him out of my shot." But the old man was a little hard of hearing, and the lobby was big, and by the time anyone moved, Damon had already lost his patience, which, to be fair, was never far away. He marched straight over, expensive shoes clicking, and stopped right in front of the bucket. "Hey, Grandpa, you're in the way." The old man looked up and smiled a real, warm smile, the kind that has nothing to defend. "Good morning, young man. Watch your step there. It's still a little wet. I'll be done shortly." Something about that smile irritated Damon more than rudeness ever could. He was used to people scrambling when he spoke. This man just kept mopping. "Done shortly?" Damon let out a short, ugly laugh and turned to his followers, the camera, the crowd. "You hear this? I just paid $400 million for this building, and the welcoming committee is a guy who can't even mop fast enough to get out of the way." A few of the investors near the elevators chuckled nervously. They didn't want to laugh, but Damon was the new boss, and laughing at the boss's jokes is the oldest survival skill in the corporate world. That little ripple of laughter was gasoline. Damon fed on it. "Tell me something," he said, circling the old man slowly, hands in his pockets, performing now. "How much do they pay you to push that thing around? 15 an hour? 12? You've been mopping the same 40 square feet for what, 20 minutes? In 20 minutes I make more than you make in a year." The old man straightened up. His knees cracked. He set both hands on top of the mop handle and rested there, patient as a stone. "Probably so," he agreed gently. "You're a very successful young man. Everyone says so. Everyone's right. Damon grinned. The old man nodded, and there was something in his eyes, not anger, not fear. Something closer to disappointment, the quiet kind a teacher feels watching a bright student make a foolish choice. Still, a man can be in a hurry his whole life and never actually get anywhere worth going. For a half second, Damon faltered. The sentence didn't compute. It wasn't the language of a janitor, but he shook it off, because admitting confusion in front of 3 million followers was not an option. "Cute," he said. "Save the fortune cookies." Then, because he wanted the moment, because he always wanted the moment, he stepped forward and tapped the bucket with the toe of his shoe. He swears, to this day, that he only meant to nudge it. It went over. All of it. A wave of grey mop water surged across the marble, soaking the old man's shoes, his pant legs, the bottom of his neat grey uniform. The crowd gasped. Someone's phone came up. "Oops," Damon said. "And here's where you'd expect the story to break one of two ways. Either the old man explodes and we get a sad scene of a humiliated worker losing his temper and being dragged out by security, or he crumbles, apologizing for water that wasn't his fault. He did neither. He looked down at his soaked shoes for a long moment. Then he crouched slowly, those knees again, and he began to wipe up the spill with his own rag, cleaning the mess that had just been made of his dignity, on his own knees, in front of the man who made it. "That's all right," he said softly, almost to himself. "It's just water. Water always finds its level eventually. Now, I want you to hold on to your anger for a moment, because I felt it too writing this, but watch what that calmness did to the room." Because while the old man wiped the floor, a few of the people in that lobby stopped laughing. A young investor near the back went very still. One of the older board members, a woman with silver-streaked hair standing quietly by the elevators, put her hand to her mouth. She knew something the rest of them didn't. Damon, of course, noticed none of it. He was already turning away, clapping his lawyer on the shoulder, calling out to the room. "All right, enough charity hour. Let's go make this place worth something." And he strode toward the elevators, toward the top floor, toward the signing room where 40 stories of glass and ambition were about to become his. He stepped over the old man on his way past, stepped right over him, like he was a puddle. The old man watched him go. And then he did something strange. He smiled again, but this time it wasn't warm. It was the small, private smile of someone who has just been handed the last piece of a puzzle he'd been quietly assembling for a long, long time. He finished wiping the floor. He wrung out his rag. He picked up his bucket. And then, instead of heading toward the supply closet, he walked toward a small, unmarked door near the back of the lobby. A door most people in that building had never noticed, and he disappeared through it. Now, let me tell you who he really was. His name was Arthur Holloway, and 41 years earlier, he had laid the first brick of that building with his own 2 hands. Arthur had built the company that lived inside Vale Tower from absolutely nothing. Not a payment app, not a quick flip. A real thing, a manufacturing and logistics firm that put tens of thousands of people to work over 4 decades, that survived 2 recessions and a fire and the death of his wife, that he ran with one unbreakable rule pinned above his office door. You can judge a man by exactly one thing: how he treats the people who can do nothing for him. He'd stepped back from the daily running of it years ago, handed the CEO title to a younger executive, taken a quiet seat as chairman emeritus, and mostly stayed out of the way. But Arthur owned the land the tower stood on. He owned the controlling shares the public never saw, held in a private trust. And critically, the part Damon's lawyers had buried in the fine print, and Damon had never bothered to read. The acquisition Damon was about to finalize wasn't complete until the founding trust signed off. On the transfer of the building's deed, one signature. Held by one man. The man whose bucket Damon had just kicked across the floor. And why was a 70-year-old chairman emeritus mopping a lobby at 8 in the morning? Because Arthur Holloway did it once a month. Quietly. In uniform. He'd been doing it for years. It was the only way, he used to say, to find out the truth about a place, because people show you who they are when they think you're no one. The executives who said good morning to the janitor. The interns who held the door. The security guards who shared their coffee. Arthur knew them all. He knew which of his managers were kind when no one was watching, and which ones turned into different people the moment the boss left the room. This morning, he had simply come to see what kind of man was buying his life's work. Now he knew. Upstairs, on the 40th floor, Damon Vale was having the time of his life. The signing room was all glass and skyline. 20 of the company's senior people sat around a table the size of a small boat, and Damon held court at the head of it, feet practically up, retelling the lobby story to anyone who'd listen, and several who clearly wished he wouldn't. And I swear, the guy just kept mopping, he laughed, like the floor was his life's work. I almost felt bad. Almost, he smirked. This place needs a serious culture upgrade. We're going to be lean, we're going to be fast, and step one is we cut the dead weight, starting with whoever's still hiring guys like that. A few people laughed. Most didn't. At the far end of the table, the woman with silver-streaked hair, the one who'd put her hand to her mouth in the lobby, folded her hands and said nothing. Her name was Elaine Carter, and she had been the company's chief operating officer for 11 years. She had also been Arthur Holloway's right hand for nearly 20. She knew exactly who was about to walk through that door, and she had decided not to say a single word to stop the train. Damon was so happily driving off a cliff. Some lessons, she figured. A man has to be allowed to teach himself. "Where's the chairman?" Damon said, glancing at his watch. "The trust guy. He's supposed to sign off so I can get my building. Let's get him in here." "I don't have all day to wait on some old money fossil. He's on his way up," Elaine said calmly. "Good. Hope he moves faster than the janitor." A few uneasy chuckles. The elevator chimed in the hallway. The doors of the signing room opened, and in walked the old man. Same silver hair, combed back. Same soft, lined face. But the grey janitor's uniform was gone. In its place, a simple, beautifully cut dark suit. No flash, no logos. The kind of quiet, expensive that doesn't announce itself because it doesn't have to. His shoes, different shoes now. Dry ones clicked softly on the floor. He carried a slim leather folder under one arm. For a moment, Damon didn't recognize him. The face was familiar, but his brain refused to connect it. A janitor and a chairman simply could not occupy the same body in Damon's worldview. Then the old man smiled, that warm smile, and said, in that same gentle voice, "Good morning again, young man. Watch your step. I hear the floor downstairs is still a little wet." The blood left Damon's face so fast, it was almost audible. Around the table, 20 senior executives rose to their feet, every single one of them, and the room filled with a low, respectful chorus. "Good morning, sir. Mr. Holloway." "Sir, sir." They called him sir, each one of them, standing. The same people who had laughed at Damon's joke 10 minutes earlier were now on their feet for the man Damon had stepped over like a puddle. "Sit. Sit. Please," Arthur said warmly, waving them down. He walked the length of the table slowly, those knees, and he did not take the empty chair near Damon. He walked all the way to the head of the table, to Damon's chair, and he stood beside it, patient, waiting, until Damon understood that he was in the wrong seat, that he had always been in the wrong seat. Damon stood up so fast he knocked his own water glass over. The irony was lost on no one. He scrambled to mop it with his sleeve, and somewhere in the room, very quietly, Someone exhaled a laugh. "Mr. Sir, I didn't." Damon's voice had lost all its swagger. It came out thin and high. "Downstairs. I didn't know." "No," Arthur agreed, settling into the chair. "You didn't know. That was rather the point, wasn't it?" He opened his leather folder, took out a single document, and laid it flat on the table where everyone could see the transfer of the deed, the one piece of paper that stood between Damon and everything he'd come to take. "This," Arthur said, tapping it gently, "is the only thing you don't already own. The building, the company, the people. All of it sits on land that belongs to a trust I built before your parents met. And by the terms of that trust, this transfer doesn't happen unless I sign it." He looked up. "I came down this morning to decide whether I would." The room was so quiet you could hear the city humming far below. "You see, money I've watched come and go for 50 years, Arthur went on, unhurried. "Buildings rise, buildings sell. That's just the tide. What I have never been willing to sell, not once, not for any number, is the soul of a place I spent my whole life building. 40,000 people have worked in this company over the years. I knew a lot of them by name. I knew the woman who ran the cafeteria for 31 years. I knew the night guard who put 3 kids through school on this company's payroll. I knew the man who mops that lobby now. His name is Carlos, by the way. He covered my shift today, and he has a granddaughter who wants to be an engineer. He let that sit. So, when I sign a building over to someone new," Arthur said, "I'm not really handing them glass and steel. I'm handing them people. And before I do that, I like to know one simple thing." He looked Damon dead in the eye. "How does this man treat someone who can do nothing for him?" Damon opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "I have my answer," Arthur said softly. He didn't shout. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. The whole room had watched it happen in the lobby, and now the whole room watched the bill come due. That was the cruelest part for Damon. There was no villain to fight, no unfair attack to rage against. There was only a kind old man who had given him every chance in the world to be decent, and a younger man who had stepped over him for laughs. "Mr. Holloway, please," Damon said, and now the desperation was naked. "That was a misunderstanding. I had cameras, I was performing. It wasn't. Look, whatever the trust wants, more money, name it. I'll double the offer. I'll triple the staff budget. I'll fund a scholarship. He was babbling now, throwing money at a wall to see what stuck. "Everyone has a price, sir. Just tell me yours." And there it was, the sentence that finished him. Arthur's face didn't harden. If anything, it softened, the way you soften towards someone you finally fully understand. "That's the difference between us, son," he said quietly. "You think everyone has a price. I spent 40 years proving they don't." He closed the leather folder. "The answer is no." "No?" Damon whispered. "No," Arthur stood. "The trust will not approve the transfer to you. The deal is dead. You'll get your deposit back every cent. I'm not a cruel man, but this building and these people are not for sale to you. Not today. Not for any number." He paused. "You may keep the payment app. I hear it's very fast." It was over. Just like that. The $400 million acquisition Damon had paraded into that lobby to claim was gone, killed not by lawyers or rivals or the market, but by 30 seconds of his own cruelty over a bucket of mop water. But the karma wasn't done. Karma rarely is. You see, Damon had filmed the whole lobby scene himself for his 3 million followers. His social media manager, in a panic, had already posted the clip that morning before anyone upstairs knew how the day would end, captioned with some joke about cleaning up my new HQ. By the time Damon rode the elevator back down alone, no entourage, the camera long since lowered that clip, had been seen 4 million times. Except the internet hadn't laughed with him. The internet had watched a 70-year-old man wipe up water on his knees while a billionaire stepped over him, and the internet had done what it does. By that afternoon, people had figured out who the old man was. The video of 20 executives rising to their feet and calling him Sir leaked next, filmed by someone in the signing room. The two clips together told the whole story without a single word of narration needed. Within a week, two of Damon's biggest business partners had quietly stepped back from deals. A bank that had been about to extend him a major credit line paused to review. The board of his own company, the half he still owned, began asking uncomfortable questions about judgment and brand risk. Money, it turned out, could not buy back the one thing he'd thrown away in that lobby: the belief that he was someone worth following. He learned the lesson Arthur had been trying to teach him for free, the hard way, in front of the entire world. And the old man? Arthur Holloway went back to the lobby the next month. Same grey uniform, same slow, even strokes of the mop, same humming under his breath. Carlos tried to argue with him about it, the way he always did, and Arthur just laughed and told him to go home early and hug that future engineer granddaughter of his. A young intern, brand new, first day, hurried past the old janitor toward the elevators late, nervous, clutching a coffee. Then she stopped, turned back, crouched down beside the bucket. "Careful, sir. The floor's wet right here," she said. "Can I grab the other mop and help you finish? I've got a few minutes." Arthur looked at her for a long moment, and he smiled, the warm one, the real one. "You know," he said, "I think you're going to do just fine here." He was right. 3 years later, she ran the whole floor. Because that was always the secret Arthur understood and Damon never did. The world is full of people who'll bow to you when you're holding the keys. But the measure of who you really are, the only measure that lasts, is how you treat the person on their knees, mopping a floor, who can do absolutely nothing for you. Water always finds its level eventually. So does character. So let me ask you this, and I really want to know. So tell me in the comments, have you ever watched someone get humiliated for being just a worker, only to find out later they were the most important person in the room? And be honest, if you'd been standing in that lobby, would you have laughed with Damon, or would you have been the one to grab the other mop? Drop your answer below, because I read every single one. If this story moved you even a little, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find these stories. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that kindness is never wasted. And if you're new here, subscribe and ring that bell, because around here we believe the quiet ones, the humble ones, the ones everybody underestimates. They always get the last word. Stay kind out there. I'll see you in the next one.